Hello, you're listening to the Saluki Gamescast. This is episode 32 for December 16th, 2022. My name is Justin Young. Joining me, as always, are Ryan Freels and OJ Duncan. And our special guest this week is Mario Sanders. Mario, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty all right. It's the last day of finals week, and got one paper submitted. I've got one more to finish up, but happy to take a little bit of a break.
So if you don't finish your finals, it is entirely the fault of this podcast.
Yes, I will direct Sandy to you.
Oh, no.
Sandy, please send all your angry emails to Justin.
I really don't want to receive any angry emails from Sandy over Christmas break. Not that I normally do, but that's the reason I don't want to receive any.
I feel like we need to have Sandy on here at some point because we've mentioned her enough.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've had her on Saluki Games content before.
Yeah, we
she
have.
was on the Rift Tracks episode.
True.
But yeah, we could have her on here. She could talk about her childhood playing Zelda. Mm-hmm. So, Ryan, OJ, how are you doing?
I'm sleepy. It's that time of semester, Justin. I'm
Alicia, is that you?
No, she's somewhere updating a controller.
She literally sent us an image this week of her updating a controller.
Yes, I saw. I'm doing good. It's been a busy week, and I'm ready to sleep for a little while. I was going to try to get more work done today, but I think I'm just going to rest and do that tomorrow. But it's been good. I've watched some good movies. I watched and my pronunciation is awful, so I'm not going to do him the disservice. I'm just going to say his middle last name. But I watched Del Toro's Pinocchio, and it's a damn good stop-motion animated film, and it takes place in Italy during World War II. So there's some relevant political commentary that very much lines up with stuff that's gone on in America for a while. And I like how they do that to complicate the whole idea of Pinocchio, you have to be a good and obey the adults. It's like, does he though? Is that always the right thing in fascist Italy? They complicate
is
that.
Geppetto a fascist in this?
No, but at first he's kind of just complicit and doesn't fight against it. And,
okay.
And Pinocchio starts off trying to listen to Geppetto, but he, after working for a circus dude that loves Mussolini, Pinocchio decides to start rebelling at one point, and those are already kind of spoilers, so I'll stop there. But so
Pinocchio's going to become a real patriot instead of a real boy.
I mean, and in this case, an anti-nationalist patriot, I guess. He's fighting against the system.
The true meaning of a patriot, not the co-opted version.
Right. Just the animation is so beautiful. This is Del Toro's first, I think, fully animated film, and it just hits it out of the park. The designs of the characters that are in the place of the Blue Fairy, I think one is a sprite of some sort, and I can't remember. I think the other character's just Death, really. So beautifully animated. I highly recommend it. And I also watched, me and a friend finished Linklater's Before trilogy by watching the movie Before Midnight, which was directed by Richard Linklater and stars Julie Delpy and Ethan Hawke. It is an amazing, beautiful film and it's a continuation of a story of just two people and their relationship over and the movies take place over 20 years, and this is the ending of that trilogy, and it's just a strong, beautiful, ambivalent, and also in places very melancholic end. I love it.
Cool. Those are great films. I haven't watched them in quite a while, but I remember liking them quite a bit. OJ, how things been with you?
Oh, pretty good. I don't really have that time of the semester right now, so
yeah, you keep rubbing that in.
This is probably the only time I'll be able to say that for a very long time, so I need to repeat it to myself, remind me why I'm here. But yeah, so I'm doing well.
He was really rubbing it in while he was yelling it at me while he was grinding my face into the broken glass on at the parking lot.
Yeah. Grade those papers, Ryan, huh? Grade them.
Yeah, well, so at some point we are going to get a call about, is OJ really picking on Ryan? Is Ryan okay? All right, yeah, it's the end of the semester. It's our finals week, so for the most part, finals are over. Everyone's wrapping up either writing papers or grading. I'm on the grading side right now, but I should be done this afternoon. So then it's just, celebrate, have a few weeks off, and enjoy the time off for a change. All right, well, let's jump right into the what you've been playing. And Ryan, why don't you start us off? What have you been playing?
So, one is just Marvel Snap. There's not really much new to say there. I think I've been strategizing more with decks that allow me to move around the place, and those are a lot more fun and exciting than I expected them to be. Like the ones where I'm moving my cards around locations.
So, are you using Vision?
Yeah, Vision,
Nightcrawler,
and then also Vulture, who if you move him to a certain to another location, he gets +5 attack.
Mm-hmm.
Or Craven, who if you move people to the locations he's in, he gets +2. And depending on how much moving, if you have Heimdall, who moves everybody at some point, or if you have I think it's Cloak, that you can transport people over around him. If you put him with Craven, you can rack up points on Craven really quickly. Craven has become a pretty powerful card for me. But also I recently got the Infinite, I think is what he's called, and he's if you miss, he's kind of like Hyper Beam in Pokemon. You have to skip one turn basically. Although if you have Sunspot, that's a good duo because Sunspot gains points for magic points you don't use, or mana points, or whatever you'd call them. But as long as you do that, and then you can play the Infinite, he's a 20 attack.
Mm-hmm.
So I've had fun using him. The main thing I think to talk about is I've played more of Harvestelia. I've been playing the demo, and I finished Chapter 1, and I think I'm kind of in the middle of Chapter 2, and I'm really sad to say I feel like I'm already done. Here's where my issue... so I really wanted to love this game, and there's things I deeply appreciate about it. Again, the fact that, like me, I can have my character use, they, them pronouns, and that they can be non-binary. That's awesome. That's beautiful. That means a lot to me, and I want to see more of that in the future. This game, to me, kind of feels like a blueprint for a better game down the road, though, in terms of gameplay. It seems like it has, some cool pieces, but they haven't developed them enough to be interesting in their own right. The farming... Maybe I'll have to give it another shot. The farming's fun, but I felt like by, this second or third time I was playing it, I was already getting, tired of it. And the fighting in it, when you're going out and fighting, and going on adventures... The fighting just isn't that exciting. I know it's supposed to complicate because you do have a skill tree that you go up over time, but it's working very slowly to move up that. And most of my fighting is just mashing one button.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a very interesting variety of attacks. And even the other attack I have isn't that much different than that. It's just it plus fire, basically.
It sounds like this game is very much here, we're going to take an okay farming simulator, we're going to take an okay action RPG and kind of mush them together, but they're both just kind of okay.
Yeah.
And they're not more than the sum of their parts.
And there's things I like. I actually really like some of the character interaction and some of the story, but it also feels kind of it's rushing by so fast that I'm not really getting to fully appreciate it. And I think this is one of the weaknesses of the fact that the game's working kind of on its own clock where you need to do things by. I can't just take my time to walk around and appreciate it. I get the challenge of that and the possible appeal of that, and also arguably kind of the how that might help the world feel more fully realized in the sense that there is this time that you have to worry about. And there's board games that I feel have done that to varying effect, either in ways that worked or to their detriment. More often their detriment, and I think in here it's not helping really. There's a part of me that hopes what happens is that this is kind of just the prototype, so to speak, that got officially released as a full game, and that down the road there will be a second version of this, and that it develops on everything and makes it awesome, because I can see where this could become a super awesome game. I think the story is like neat in it, and I like the character interactions. I love like the character art in the game, like when you see them, like when characters are talking and you see like, you know, their heads pop up at the bottom of the screen, and like the artwork and how it's illustrated. And some people complained about the graphics, but I think that it has kind of a fairy tale look to it, and the softness of the graphics that works for it. And some of the designs in it are really cool, but just the gameplay itself, and also when I am going on adventures, the places that I'm going to, there's not like a whole lot of variety in how they look, so it all kind of blends in. So I get lost, and not an interesting. Okay, I got to figure out the organization of this place, but this all just looks kind of the same, and it's really easy to like get lost in it. I don't want to be like hard on this game. I want to again deeply appreciate what they did. That's super important to me, but it's just not the best gameplay experience. Again, I hope they do like a better game down the road. I respect and appreciate the hell out of the creator for some of the stuff they have done that are so important, but the gameplay itself still needs a lot of work.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair criticism, right? Like, I mean, a game can do one thing that's really either important or do one thing that's really done well, but if the whole of it isn't, you know, it still may not be something you really want to engage with.
Yeah, I might give it another shot or play some more of it down the road, but I think if that, though, I'm not going to buy it at full price. I'm going to wait till it goes down in price.
Right.
Yeah, but Harvestelia, some beautiful ideas in this game, some beautiful artwork. The game in and of itself, though, just needs a lot of work still.
All right, that sounds fair. Is that it?
Yeah.
All right. Mario, what have you been playing recently?
I haven't really played much since the end of November. I think the last two games I've played were Celeste and Razor Freestyle Scooter for the N64, but those were more speedrunning things, so those are games I play fairly regularly. November was a really big month. Every November, a friend does an event for his birthday where he puts together a list of 10 games and sends it to us, and we beat them. So in November, I played and beat Yoshi's Island, Donkey Kong Country, Super Mario Sunshine, Hollow Cure, Super Monkey Ball 2, Cool Spot, Little Samson, Kirby Superstar, Mickey Speedway USA, and Donkey Kong 64 101%. So it was a big month. Thanksgiving break was just no lifing Donkey Kong 64 and getting all of those collectibles.
I was going to say, that's a big game to 100%.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot in there. And I think the fun thing about it every year is he's got some stuff from his childhood, but that's also semi-obscure. I mean, all of those ones I think I was pretty familiar with, but even though I was familiar with them, most of those were a first playthrough. So it's an event that a lot of us always have fun with. And, you know, I've completed it the last 2 years. So this year I was also like, I'm definitely going to do it. I gotta make sure that I keep that streak. But, yeah, other than that, haven't really played a ton. Actually, I guess, on Twitch, I'm participating in a mystery tournament where it's just a race setting where you don't know the game you're going to play until about 5 minutes before the start of the race. And so the game we played that we were given was called Chu Man Fu, where you play as a highly questionable Asian caricature. It was for the TurboGrafx 16. It was a puzzle game.
I feel like you could have just said it was an Asian character game for the TurboGrafx 16, and that would have cleared up that it was going to be questionable.
As soon as I heard the name of that, I'm like, oh.
Like, everything on the TurboGrafx 16, I feel like, was highly questionable.
Highly questionable content. The story of the Turbo 16.
I mean, it really was, and it's weird why that particular system got so many weird games like that, but there's a lot of games on there where you go back and you look at them now and you go, really? Like, somebody thought this was okay to release?
Yeah, it was, I think, like, in the, they give the game and they give like a small little guide, and that was like the first thing that the very first sentence. It was fine. It would be better if it weren't like racing it. The puzzles were pretty interesting though. But other than that,
What sort of game is Two Man Food? Because I don't think I'm familiar with that.
it's a puzzle game where you take these different colored balls and you have to roll them around sort of this map and get them onto the corresponding colored platform. So there'd be like a
Okay.
red ball, a green ball, a black ball, and a blue ball, and each one does their own thing. So like the black ball was really good at breaking walls. The red ball was really good at destroying enemies. And so each one kind of did their own thing. And I think the only thing that was frustrating about it, again, because it was a race setting, so trying to go fast, the like going around corners was really precise because you would go both forward and backwards. And if you would break a wall, you'd just be like on a post and it would be difficult to like get around it. But otherwise, it was a pretty like interesting game. It's one that in a slow setting, I think, yeah, it had some pretty interesting puzzles. Yeah, I think I've got a friend who's doing a big speed run thing over the next couple of weeks, so I'll probably join that once break is over. And then the other game that I have not started, but we did a like Secret Santa game exchange. I got Chicory, and I've heard really good things about it.
Yeah, that's a good game.
And I've had it for a while, so the fact that he picked it just kind of ended up working out. And so I'll look forward to playing that over break, play it while I'm flying home because I've got it on the Switch.
So, Donkey Kong 64, going back and playing that now, like that was sort of the peak of the sort of 3D platformer collectathon. I feel like, that was the point where people said, we've gone too far. We've done too much. There's too many collectibles in a game finally. Going back and playing it now and with, the hindsight of today, how does that game feel? How does it hold up?
So I actually played it for the first time earlier this year. I had no sort of nostalgia for it or anything like that, other than like watching friends play it. But even that would just be like within the past couple of years. I think there's a lot about that game that's pretty fun. It is definitely very broken and very breakable, but and there's some rude stuff about that game. The beetle race, for people who are familiar, and the Aztec world is maybe the least fun thing I've played in a video game recently.
Yeah, I didn't enjoy that either.
But yeah, I mean, I think it's got a lot of stuff that's pretty fun about it. If you're willing to go into it knowing that this is gonna be kind of a hot mess at times.
Right.
The one thing I will say that made this playthrough significantly better, or at least much smoother, is there's a mod called Tag Anywhere, where rather than having to go back to the barrel to change your Kong, you can just do it like right there wherever you are in the world. So, all of the different colored bananas for each character, you don't have to like, backtrack to the barrel. Okay, now I got to get chunky. Backtrack to the barrel. Now I got to get tiny. You can just do it right there using the D-pad. And so it makes a playthrough much smoother.
Sure.
So like that definitely added a convenience to it. And when I played it earlier this year, the Tag Anywhere mod, like it was around and it existed, but I didn't use it. And I don't know if I would play through that game without it.
Right.
Because the backtracking in it is pretty brutal.
That sounds like one of those technical limitations of the N64 at the time, that you couldn't do the real-time character swapping.
I could definitely see that being the case.
And so, yeah, I mean, that's one of those, when they go and they do like remakes of games, and, it's sort of like when they did the 3DS remake of Ocarina of Time, and they made it so that you could switch the boots, like just by pressing a button on the bottom screen. So it just completely changed the water tempo because you're not opening the menu and going through and changing and then changing back and all that. I mean, you look at things like that and you go, okay, this is the use of doing a remake, because you can make these sorts of smart changes to a classic game and actually make that game much more playable without making it necessarily easier, just, less frustrating.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing is it's not an easier game by any means, but it is far more convenient and a smoother playthrough. I think that's the best way I could describe it. I still think that game has one of the best final boss fights. The boxing match against K. Rool, where each round you're using a different Kong, is fantastic.
I just want to say, like, something you said that just kind of, like, spoke to my soul was when you're like, that Aztec level is one of the most unfun levels I've had in a long time. Oh, God, I remember getting so mad at that level as a kid.
That beetle race is haunting.
I think I remember trying to, like, there's a part where, like, some, like, platforms come out across a wall, and it's timed as to how you have to, like, jump around on those little platforms. And, I mean, granted, I'm not good at, like, precision platforming anyway, but that combined with, like, some of the old jank of the Nintendo 64 controls. Oh.
That, and then, of course, I think perhaps the most infamous part of that game is Beaver Bother, which is the bonus stage where you have to, using the claptrap, scare the beavers into the middle of the hole. But I don't know what it is, like the collision is broken. So like when they should go into the hole, they just like all smash into like this invisible wall, and it's
broken collision detection.
Yeah,
that was common on the N64.
and the creepy castle, which is the last stage, you have to do that one twice. But it's a fun game. It's one that I would definitely play again. So,
and that's not on the Switch and 64 expansion pass yet, right? Donkey Kong 64?
I don't believe so.
Yeah, so that seems like seems like a game they would put out onto that.
Yeah, I think so. And I think I imagine if they put it out and it's people's first time playing it, I expect to read, going back to that tag barrel every single time is not great. I have an EverDrive for the Nintendo 64, so I was able to put the modded ROM onto that so I could still play it on actual hardware, because that game does not emulate very well. But fun game.
I wish we got another 3D platformer with Donkey Kong. I'm always kind of sad that we never got another one that could maybe polish up and refine that. And
well, that was the rumor for the last year and a half or so, that the Mario Odyssey team was working on a new 3D Donkey Kong platformer.
I'm so cheated.
And but that rumor has kind of died off, because the rumor was that it was coming out in the last year, and then obviously that didn't happen. There's been no news of it. So now people are wondering, have they actually just been working on a new Mario game for whatever the eventual Switch successor is for its launch? So, I mean, I guess we'll see, but that team has not been working on anything, I don't think, over the last few years since the release of Mario Odyssey. So they have to be doing something.
Well, I believe in Donkey Kong 64 there's over 3,000 collectibles, and you got to make this one even bigger. It takes a long time to make all those collectibles, Justin.
Yeah, I mean, maybe 10,000 collectibles.
100,000 collectibles.
The return of the collectathon, just like the obnoxious collectathon.
It's just every inch of ground is covered with a collectible. So you just basically have to walk everywhere. It's just constantly meters, just like a slot machine on the screen.
The downloadable content, collectibles.
There includes some Metroidvania stuff, so you have to go all the way back. And
right, but no convenient, fast moving or fast travel.
And only one barrel you can go back to.
At the beginning of the game.
Yes.
So you're playing each level 5 times.
Yeah.
And there's even more Kongs than there ever have been before. There's at least 50 Kongs. It's the Kong family reunion. That's the name of the game.
The Kongverse, into the Spider-Verse. The Kongverse.
There you go. It's the Kong multiverse. What a just horrifying game that sounds like.
I've got a friend. She's a huge Donkey Kong fan, and when the Mario trailer came out, she's like, "The return of Swanky Kong," in the Coliseum thing. It was like, you've got all those Kongs from the Donkey Kong Country games that had their little side area.
There can be like a Hank Hill Donkey Kong, like Hanky Kong. Like a Kong that's just really obsessed with propane and propane accessories.
I feel like that's a joke that nobody under 20 will at all get.
Oh, I guarantee you, plenty of people today still know about Hank Hill.
All right. Is that it,
Yeah.
Mario?
Yeah.
All right. OJ, what have you been playing?
So like I said last week, I started playing Final Fantasy XIV again, and it's I can't tell you just how much better it is now that I got to Shadowbringers, because if you're not familiar with the game, they released Final Fantasy XIV and it was just horrible. It was broken. The classes were really horrible. The gameplay was really horrible. So essentially they just went back and like redid it from scratch. They had a really big event in game where like the world was about to be destroyed. And then like one of the main characters from Final Fantasy XIV, the original one, like apparently just like sacrificed his life and died. Then they came back with The Realm Reborn, which was like, it wasn't like a full remake, but they really redid a lot of stuff in the game.
There's a really good documentary on YouTube from No Clip about this. Mm-hmm. And so it's worth watching, even if you're not playing the game. Yeah. It's just a cool story.
And so they called it A Realm Reborn. It wasn't really an expansion. It was just, they redid it. And it was fantastic. I started playing after A Realm Reborn started. And I played through quite a bit, and then I stopped playing mostly because of schoolwork, and I didn't really have time. And then, so my husband Josh plays, and he's been playing for a long time. And then, so I started again a couple of years ago, and I played through A Realm Reborn, which was really nice. I really liked the story. I really liked the gameplay. I played as Summoner, and so Summoners were really fun. I've always liked Summoner classes. And the story was really great. And then it went from A Realm Reborn, and the first expansion was Heavensward. And that was the first problem, is because the story really, really, really slowed down and got really boring for me. And it was just like drudging through all of this stuff. And for a lot of it, you were just running around and getting a little story, and then there's like full motion video here, and then a little bit more story over here, and you're not really doing much of anything. And then you have to get together with people in a dungeon, right? And so I plowed through that. There were some good parts about it, but really it was kind of boring. And then there was Stormblood after that. So Heavensward and then Stormblood. And Stormblood also was really, really boring and really, really slow. And so as I'm just going through all of this stuff, and then the character summoner got really, really, really complicated. And there was like, depending on what you're doing or what you summoned, you have to summon other things, and then you were doing a lot of damage over time, and then you had to spread that damage over time to everybody else. And there was just a whole lot to do for Summoner. And so it was boring, and I was just getting kind of overwhelmed at all the stuff that I had to do. So I stopped playing again. I heard that the next expansion was great. So then I was like, okay, you know what? I'm just going to go back and try it again. So I finally pushed through the very end of Stormblood and started Shadowbringers, this new expansion. Or not the new one, but the new to me expansion. And it was like night and day between the last two expansions and this one, because the story immediately got really super interesting. In between each expansion, they have like little patches that they put in that add more story. So once we got to that final story, and so this has been out 5 or so years or so I hope I'm not spoiling this for anybody, but like all of the people that you adventured through the game with before, they all just like passed out, and they couldn't wake up, and nobody knew why, nobody knew what was happening. And then you find out that they were being pulled to another world because there's the original world that they call the Source got split into 13 different worlds. And then they were being pulled to the first world that was split. And so in the game, these worlds get sometimes they get pulled back to the Source, the original one that you're from. And when that happens, it's called an umbral calamity. And it's like a huge like calamity, and like a bunch of people die, and it's really horrible, right? So the first was on its way to merge again with the Source where you're from, and they pulled you there to stop it. So you got pulled to this different world by a person called the Crystal Exarch. And so all of the people that were passed out were actually there. Their souls just kind of got pulled there, not their body, but your body got pulled through because you're the most important one. And so I remember one of the things that I love about this is that you're actually like the main character in the story. Like in EverQuest, you were a side character, right? In World of Warcraft, you were kind of a side character, right? In Final Fantasy XIV, you're the main character, and people recognize that. They're like, oh my God, you've done all of this stuff. You're so amazing. Like, you're the Warrior of Light. And then in this one, the Warrior of Darkness. And so what happened in the first is that there's something called ether, spelled with an A, that everything is made out of. It's essentially the element that everything is made of in this world. And there has to be a balance between light and darkness. And on the first, the balance for light got so big that light flooded the entire world and just like destroyed everything, right? Like imagine like super blaring sunlight just hitting everything and like ripping everything apart. And then there was an Oracle of Light who was able to stop it for a small area of this world. And that's where you come in. But it's daytime all the time. Like there's no night, there's nothing. And then so as you're playing through, there's they call them sin eaters, which are like creatures that were corrupted by the light. And you're like fighting and killing them. Then there's light wardens, which each area has a light warden, and they're like the boss of that area, and all of the other sin eaters are like pulled towards them. So when you go and you kill the first light warden, and it shows the sky, and the sky goes from like this blaring light, and then it like dissipates, and there's night there, and it's like a night sky, and there's stars, and there's people who have been in this for like their entire life. And the people are like looking up in awe at the night sky, and they call it like the sunless sea. And it was such an amazing moment in the game. Like I've never seen writing in a video game, I think, that good, except for when coming into here. And then like you seeing all these people like, oh my God, we never thought this would happen. We thought we were all going to die. And so your goal in this one is to go through and defeat all of the light wardens, to bring night back again, to help move the balance back towards a balance between light and dark so that it's not going to merge with your source and just destroy everyone. And Summoner went from being very, very, very complicated to much easier. It's actually a little too easy for me right now, but you can switch between classes. You just have to level them up. So I'm going to try out some other classes too, but I just love Summoners. And it is nice because the boss battles are just really complicated sometimes. When I was playing EverQuest and I was a cleric, I would sit around a corner because nothing would go through walls, right? So I would just sit around the corner and heal people. And that was really all we needed to do for a lot of fights until I quit EverQuest. But with this, there's like very complicated. You have to be watching everything on the screen. You have to watch and see if a certain buff or debuff pops up on you. There's just a lot of stuff happening in the fights here. So having kind of a simple rotation for what I'm casting is kind of nice, if we're being honest. But I do want to try out some more characters.
The story moment, I think, sounds really cool because it's what you might expect from a single player game, but not often from a lot of MMOs.
Right.
Of having that sort of like, just like there are really cool moments in MMOs where everyone's kind of together playing and everything, but like that sort of a story moment, happening in the game world is not something that you always see. So that's really neat.
Yeah, and like the game changes for you too. Like it's day until you do that, and then you're at night, and there's other people there who are still in the day, which I think MMORs before this never really did anything like that. Everyone was always in the same environment.
Sure.
And now you can have NPCs in a certain area that aren't there for other people because you're at a certain part of the game. And I think that's really fantastic. And I know that Shadowbringers, that's it, won a lot of awards for just being really amazing, and a lot of people were coming back to it. And then Endwalker, again, a lot of people were coming back to it because like they had to stop selling it for a little bit because there were so many people playing. I
think that's been also expedited because so many people have been fleeing World of Warcraft.
Yeah.
And so they're looking for that MMO fix, and this is the hot MMO for right now.
Yeah, and it is definitely worth it. If you do start playing it, push through Heaven's Word and Stormblood, because like they're okay. There's some moments in them, but really it's rough. But once you get to Shadowbringers, it's really fantastic. And like so like one area is a bunch of like refugees. There's a town where all of the essentially rich people are, and it's run by who I'm assuming is going to be the end boss of the expansion. And so, but he can control the Sin Eaters, the person who is the head of the town of the rich people. And the rich people come, they give all their money, and then they essentially live a lavish life. And there's people who are poor, really living on the outskirts of it, and they come down and they say, hey, we need someone to do this. And then they bring people up there to the town to act as like servants to the rich people. But there's something weird happening that I haven't seen yet, because when they come down and take somebody, they give them a food source. And I was like, oh, is this a Soylent Green thing that's happening? I'm betting it's a Soylent Green thing, but I haven't gotten that far. And the story is just so fantastic.
That sounds like a very Final Fantasy VII setup.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I know that parts of the game are based off of the mainline Final Fantasy ones. And this could be partially from that, honestly. There was, I think I talked about this last week, but I was very excited because there was a Mist Dragon fight, and it was very much like the Mist Dragon from Final Fantasy IV. And I know that I think there's floating continent stuff coming up soon. I can't remember which expansion it was. And then we go to the moon, which is, again, Final Fantasy
IV.
Yeah. So I'm really excited at all the nods and Easter eggs that are in the game.
Cool. Anything else?
That's it for me.
All right. Well, I bit the bullet. I played High on Life.
Are you feeling high on life, Justin?
No. This is the Justin Roiland. Is that how you pronounce his name? Roiland?
Yeah, I think so.
He is the co-creator of Rick and Morty. And this is the game that he, I guess he helped write. He definitely does voices in the game. It's the game where you're an alien bounty hunter, basically. And the I guess the big selling point is that your guns talk. And boy, do they talk. They never shut up.
Isn't that delightful, though?
Well,
hey, listen.
Yeah, it is very much that. It's the Navi effect, right? Like it's so the main gun that you get is Justin Roiland doing the Morty voice from Rick and Morty. And it is the Morty voice. Like, there is no differentiation there whatsoever.
Oh, I imagine you never get tired of hearing that.
I mean, so the game itself is a sort of, you start off in like a hub world. There's a setup for the game, and some of that's kind of like, this is kind of fun and clever. But like very quickly you end up in this little hub world, and you're going out and you like there's shops and stuff, so you can upgrade items and upgrade your abilities, get new abilities and all that. But then you go through this like sort of portal to do the actual bounty missions and everything, and that warps you to different environments. And I will say this is the biggest selling point of this game. The environments are incredibly varied. They're incredibly colorful. They're pretty nice to look at for the most part. I think the hub world starts off looking really cool, and then once you actually explore it a little bit, you're kind of like, this is kind of boring. This is not as exciting as I had hoped it would be on first look. But the actual game worlds, the levels that you're exploring, I think actually look pretty cool. I would say that's by far the best point of this game. That's the biggest selling point. The actual gameplay is not very good Halo, is how I would describe it. Like, It's very much like arena sort of style. You walk into an area, a bunch of enemies show up and attack you in waves. Some of your guns are very Halo style, like you get a needler gun, basically. And it works just like the needler in Halo. So, like, they're very obviously taking inspiration from that. And, yeah, I mean, like, that's the gameplay loop right there, right? Like, it is very kind of straightforward. And I would say it's functional. It's not like a broken game. It's not a game that you're playing and going, oh my God, I can't believe anybody would ever design a game this way. But nothing about the gameplay is exceptional. It is very, and I would actually argue it feels outdated compared to a lot of modern games. So it feels like it's aping Halo, but it's aping Halo Combat Evolved on the Xbox in kind of the setup and play and all that. So I would say the real sales point of this game is and I'm going to put this in quotes, the comedy of the game. And I think the comedy of the game is going to be extremely hit or miss, depending on what you personally find funny. If you love Rick and Morty, if you think Pickle Rick is the height of comic genius,
No.
this game is for you. If not, this game may just make every muscle in your body tense up while you're playing it. And I feel like that was more how I was playing this game. So I will say there were parts that made me amused. So like one of the early things that happens is that your house gets transported to this alien world. And so like your human house is your base of operations that you come back to, and then you're in this futuristic city with flying vehicles and stuff, and so you go out there and that's your hub world and everything. But when you come back to your house, this alien bounty hunter that you're basically taking over for, he sets up shop in your house, and so he's sitting on the couch watching TV, and on the TV they have a real movie. It's called Tammy and the Teenage T-Rex, which is a real movie. It's a real movie with Paul Walker in it, a very young Paul Walker. It's like his first film that he ever did. And that movie's just playing on the TV, and you can sit down and just watch that entire movie.
Okay, that's kind of cool. I'll give them that.
I mean, that's a joke from the game The Darkness that came out like 10 years ago, where they had a full movie in that game you could sit and watch. But like, it's still neat. It's still like kind of funny and everything. And it's this obscure movie. Who's the actress in that? It's the actress from, what's the movie? I can't even think. Starship Troopers. I can't think of her name right now. Anyways, Ryan's looking it up, I think, so he can remind me. She was in one of the Bond movies too, wasn't she? Didn't she play like a nuclear scientist in one of the Bond movies?
Denise Richards?
Yeah, Denise Richards. Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's Paul Walker and Denise Richards. So it's like kind of fun just to see the two of them very young in this movie and everything. So that's like a fun joke. But like then the rest of the jokes are like so I'm going to spoil an early joke. So if you don't want to hear this early joke, but I promise you, there are literally thousands of jokes before and after this in the minutes.
Angry Rick and Morty fans, send all your empty McDonald's Szechuan sauce packets to Justin at.
But like, you go down into the slums of this city, and this little boy walks out in front of you, and he's like, hey, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? You're not supposed to be here. So, and it's that constant Rick and Morty, like I'm filibustering, talking. And you're sitting there and you have your gun pointed at this little boy, and the gun's like, oh no, man, you shouldn't shoot a kid. Oh, that's terrible. You can't shoot a kid. Not in a video game. That's not how video games work. And then you keep pressing the trigger because the kid keeps talking, and finally it does allow you to shoot the kid. And then, your gun's sitting there going, I can't believe we shot a kid. Video games don't let you shoot kids. What's going on? This isn't a normal video game. And it's just that. Imagine that all the time. every interaction constantly. It is, and so like there is actually a meter that you can turn down how much the gun talks. which is like great. Yes, awesome, brilliant. You should include that in there, but it doesn't really matter because a lot of the talking is in cutscenes or like scripted moments in the game. So yeah, the gun's talking when you're in the little battle scenes, but like you're still not able to escape the annoyance of this constant chatter. And so like you get a knife and the knife is just sitting there constantly going, let me cut somebody open. Let me slit their throat, and just constantly. And so again, like this game, so I said when we talked about this game over the last year, when they first showed it off and everything, I said, I actually enjoyed Rick and Morty. This game makes me dislike Rick and Morty. And I think it actually makes me reevaluate my feelings towards Rick and Morty. So while I was playing this, I thought, I actually don't think Rick and Morty is all that funny. I like the sci-fi storylines of Rick and Morty. That's what I enjoy about Rick and Morty. I don't enjoy the humor. That's what I'm enjoying when I watch Rick and Morty. I actually think the storylines are pretty clever and interesting. This game made me finally come to that conclusion. I don't actually like Rick and Morty's humor. I find it obnoxious. I kind of always have, from the very first episodes where it's just Rick burping every third line or whatever he's doing. And this game drives that point home, like even exponentially for me. And so it's just not very good. But if you love Rick and Morty, if you think Rick and Morty is the height of humor, and there are people out there who definitely do, then you're going to think this game is brilliant. The other thing I'll say about it is, so I mentioned that line, oh, this isn't what we do in video games. There's other lines like that throughout the game. There's lines like that in the descriptions of items as you pick them up and everything. And so it takes on this very sort of, well, this is a parody of a video game. So when we make you do something stupid, it's not because we're not very creative game designers. It's because we're making fun of other games when they do this.
Because that makes it creative then.
Right. And so it's like, well, but you're still making a bad game with bad cliche level design and everything. You're just calling it out as you're doing it. That doesn't make it any better. This is like writing a bad pop song and then saying, oh, but like we're making fun of pop songs. And it's like, no, like Weird Al is actually a good musician. That's why he's lasted so long.
Yeah.
Like, there's actually craft and art to what he does. So yeah, it's just a bad game. And like, there's nothing I can recommend about it. The gameplay's not great. The humor's not great. The level design is colorful. That's cool to see. And I guess that's a positive I can say about it. But I feel like for a lot of people, this game is going to grate at them as they're playing it, and they're not going to actually get a good experience out of it.
At the end of the day, they won't be high on life.
No, I don't think anybody's going to be high on this game. Maybe if you're high.
I'm sure plenty of people will be high on it. But
I do think it being on Game Pass is going to make it far more played.
Well, that's the reason I played.
Yeah, oh, sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's like, even though you said all of that, I still think the fact that I don't have to spend $60 on this game, I already have Game Pass. I might check it out, but yeah, I think that was maybe the best decision that ultimately whoever gets to make that decision made was, let's just put this on Game Pass.
I mean, look, if you like Rick and Morty, play this game. This is a Rick and Morty game without Rick and Morty. Well, without Rick. Morty's definitely in this. He's just a gun.
It's all Morty.
But like, I mean, if you like that show, if you like Justin Roiland's sense of humor and everything, and that's very entertaining to you, and I'm not even being critical of that, then great. This is a game made for you. But like short of that, like, I mean, and yeah, it's on Game Pass. if you already have Game Pass, you're getting this for free, essentially. Like, play it. I mean, that's why I played it. I would not have spent $60, $70 on this game. I would encourage no one to spend $60, $70 on this game. Like, even if you think you are potentially into it, this is much more of a $20, $30 game, and I would guess this game will be that price by March. But you know, it's worth seeing, and I think there's a couple of gags in it that work well enough. But you know, it's the sort of like shotgun mentality. I'm going to shoot 100 jokes at you, and maybe one of them will land, and that's fine a lot of times. But when you're firing that many in a short succession, it's just overwhelming.
It's like like a broken clock is right at least twice a day. Like,
yeah, I mean, it feels punishing. The humor in this game feels punishing to play through.
So there's a subset of people who like Rick and Morty who are convinced that people who don't like Rick and Morty don't get it because they're not smart enough. And they're like, I'm smarter than everybody else, and so I get everything that's in Rick and Morty, and it's funny and it's hilarious.
Because if it's meta, it has to be smart,
right.
OJ.
And so that subset of people is who I think this game is actually designed for, because they're going to buy it no matter what, because they want to prove that they're smarter than everybody else, and they get every single joke that's in there, and they get the gameplay, and they get to play it. They get the parody, right?
Yeah, I mean, and like I said, I think Rick and Morty has clever plots. Mm-hmm. Like, if you go back and you watch Rick and Morty, some of the plot lines are pretty clever, science fiction sort of, you know, plot lines and stuff. And some of that can be kind of fun. But, like, the humor is very sophomoric. Mm-hmm. I mean, the same thing in this, right? And that's fine. Like, I don't have anything against that. Right. South Park is very sophomoric. Right. Family Guy is very sophomoric. Mm-hmm. I don't
particularly... you just made that would have made so many fans mad that you compared it to Family Guy, I'm sure.
But I mean, that is the style of humor, right, for these type of shows, and there's nothing wrong with that. I really liked those shows when I was in college. Mm-hmm. Like, I really liked South Park. Mm-hmm. I think South Park is better than either of those other shows, because South Park is more of a satire, and I think, like, at its best, South Park is actually very smart. Mm-hmm. Though I think South Park has the same problem of its fans sometimes thinking it's smarter than it actually is.
Yeah.
But, like, you know, I would say this and, you know, and Rick and Morty, I don't think ever reached the levels of something like, say, Futurama, that actually packs real emotion and clever storytelling and genuinely funny jokes. I don't think they're on the same level, but that's my personal opinion, right? Like, I don't begrudge anyone for loving this style of humor. It just doesn't work for me. And if it does work for you, you'll probably get a lot more out of High on Life. If it doesn't work for you, I would say go into this game knowing it's going to just be that rapid fire all the time. It's a clever idea for a game. I mean, to have a companion, and I think this solves the problem that a lot of games have tried to do over the years of having a sort of companion following you around, commenting, you know, sort of a sidekick, throwing off lines and stuff. And I think this game solves it by making that your gun, right? And so games like Ratchet and Clank have solved that by, you know, putting the other character in a backpack or something. You know, you're sort of Banjo-Kazooie.
I was going to say, don't forget Banjo.
Yeah. I mean, but Banjo-Kazooie didn't have constant chatter and stuff. I guess if we had one made today, it would, right?
Don't give Justin Roiland ideas.
But anyways, that's the setup and everything. But yeah, I mean, not for me, but some people are going to find something they really like in it. So
I was kind of curious about this one when I heard it. So I'm not like one of the people that I've been making fun of it. I don't actually hate Rick and Morty. I actually like the first 2 seasons of it, but I get, and before people, you just don't get it. No, I get why they might have. I get the possible reasons we'll see, like, as it unravels further, as to why it went into season 3 the way it did. But I felt like I was watching like Rick build as a character and grow as a character, and then season 3 was just like, nope, screw that. And I was like, that kind of was the thing that kind of like I kept watching it afterwards still, but that kind of put me off of it. Because I get some of the possible clever sci-fi reasons for why it might be doing, there's like theories about, well, we're following different Rick and Mortys at different times or whatever, and that could be interesting, but I'll still take good character development over that, and I felt cheated out of that. So that's my.
Yeah, I would say HBO's Harley Quinn series actually does what Rick and Morty tries to do better.
Agreed.
In a lot of ways. I mean, I think it has actual character development. I think it has the sort of body, vulgar humor at times, and I think that's a better show, to be honest.
I think it's more consistently funny too. Like just the humor around Bane was great.
Yeah, or King Shark. I really like him as a character. Yeah, so I played that. The other thing I played Midnight Fight Express. I talked about it last week. I finished it. That's a really cool game. I think some of the later levels get a little punishing with particular sequences that different people are going to have different experiences with. There were a couple that I got hung up on for a while, and I felt like were kind of unfair. But that still is a really cool game. I still hate all the chatter, but now that I beat the game, I can go back and play any of the levels with all the chat turned off. And I think that'll make it a better experience because all I really want to do is kill people in a very creative, fun, cool manner, which is what that game does at its very best. So that is a game I would recommend to people. Maybe if you can find it cheap and everything. It also is on Game Pass, so if you have Game Pass, it's a great one to check out. The last thing I checked out, I'll just talk about real briefly because I haven't spent a ton of time with it, is Vampire Survivors released its DLC called Legacy of the Moonspell. I did play a little bit of that. It has some new enemies. It has a new weapon. It basically, the level is set in this like snowy mountainous region. So it's sort of like a Viking sort of theme to it, I guess. The thing that's cool is you start off kind of in the wilderness. If you go to the south of the level, there's actually a village and there's buildings you can go inside of, which is very different from other Vampire Survivor levels. And then if you go to the north, there's actually a system of caves you can go into. And you can go in and out of the caves, and like there's different like chambers of the caves and everything. So it's pretty cool. Very hard level, which makes sense. It's DLC, kind of something that you'll play after you've played the entire rest of the game. But it's cool. And if you like Vampire Survivors, it's only like $1.50 or something. So I think you can get the whole game and the DLC together for $5. So again, still one of the best bargains in video games there. All right, that does it for what we've been playing. Let's move on to the news, and we have some like kind of varied news this week. So let's talk through some of that. First off, OJ, you sent this along. I think I had seen it about the same time that you sent it. There is newly uncovered footage of the Michael Jackson Scramble Training motion simulator arcade game from Sega World. And that is quite a mouthful. So let's kind of break that down. Back in the 90s, Sega in Japan ran a series of arcades. Some of those were called Sega World. And they would have normal arcade games there, but then they would have very like sort of unique experiences that you could only play at Sega World. And some of these were like motion simulator style games where you'd get inside something, like the motion simulators you see at the mall or that sort of thing. And they actually made one of these with Michael Jackson, and Michael Jackson appears in the game. So like when the game starts, Michael Jackson comes on the screen and he's like in some sort of like space cadet uniform and he's talking to you. And he's like, "Hi, I'm Commander Jackson." And, and he starts giving you the spiel about what you're doing in the game and everything. people had known this game existed, but they did not actually have good quality footage from it. And of course, Sega World no longer exists. And so a lot of these things have been torn down and everything. So somebody actually at a yard sale found an original tape from this. And so they digitized the footage and everything. They put it online. So you can go on YouTube and actually watch this footage. And it's just kind of neat because it's just even more of, we're finding out more and more, I feel like, how much Michael Jackson was involved with Sega. So over the last year, we've had confirmed and then unconfirmed and then kind of reconfirmed that he definitely did do the soundtrack or part of the soundtrack for Sonic the Hedgehog 3. Of course, he appears in Space Channel 5. And then here he is in this game as well. So just kind of neat. It's also one of those things that sadly, because of his legacy as a private individual, that a lot of this, I left out Moonwalker. How could I forget? It was the Moonwalker home game and also the arcade game that they made. But his legacy as an individual means that a lot of this stuff is just getting swept under the rug. And in one regard, that's completely understandable. But on another side, like, Moonwalker's actually a really good game. Space Channel 5 is a really good game. Sonic the Hedgehog 3 is the third Sonic the Hedgehog game.
There's the title of today's episode. Sonic the Hedgehog 3 is the third Sonic the Hedgehog game.
And, it's just kind of sad that Sega can't embrace this legacy, and that, again, it kind of gets swept under the rug. Like, we'll probably never get a Moonwalker re-release or anything. And I understand that, but it's also really kind of sad because that's a pretty good game. Even the arcade game's like pretty fun. And those are entirely different games in that regard. So anyways, kind of neat and everything from a preservation standpoint that they were able to find that. OJ, you'll be excited. The ESRB has rated the Final Fantasy Pixel remasters for both the PlayStation 4 and the Switch. Now, this is usually the last step before a release date is announced or before the games themselves are released. So, OJ, how excited are you to have the Pixel remasters actually on Switch?
Actually, I'm very excited because I really don't play on my computer that much. I'm much more often playing on consoles. So seeing this on the Switch and the PS4, I'm very excited. And we were talking about the Donkey Kong 64 and how there was that quality of life with being able to change at any point with that mod. And I think the Final Fantasy Pixel remasters did a lot of that quality of life changes because you can save in more areas than you used to be able to. You can fast forward through fights, and there's auto battles for the games that didn't have auto battles before. And so it's so much better on the ones that I played through. And I'm excited to have them on a console, so I'm more likely to play them.
Are the Pixel remasters 1 through 6 or 1 through
6? Yes.
Okay.
And they do not include any of the additional content from any re-releases either. They're just remasters of the original.
Yeah, so it doesn't have Final Fantasy IV, the after years, that sort of stuff in there.
Or any of the after game dungeons or anything that were added to a lot of them.
Yeah, when they ported them to the DS and stuff like that, they did some of that work.
Yeah, which I wish they were included as hey, in a remaster, and we're adding this extra stuff in the spirit of the original game, but maybe they'll do that at some point later.
It might be neat, if they did something okay, you remember when they on GameCube released Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, with Wind Waker, but there's also Master Quest, which was a different version. It'd be cool if they did something like that, I think.
Yeah.
I'm also kind of excited about this, particularly because of 6, so Final Fantasy VI, I got a Nintendo 64, I never had a Super NES, but is one of those games that I kind of would hear about and learn about, and in retrospect, I wish I got a chance to play that one.
You haven't played it?
No, I have not. And it's one I've really wanted to play for a while, so I'm I'm happy about this because this means I'll get a chance to play this, and this will be like high up on my list really quick.
Well, now I have a good reason to beat you up after the podcast.
I do
Just saw where
like.
that was going.
I should note OJ's gasp there was 100% authentic. He was really like taken aback that Ryan had never played Final Fantasy VI.
Oh, gee, I had an N64. That was my first console.
There have been emulators for SNES games for over 20 years.
Okay, fine. I didn't emulate it, but
I understand.
This is going to be the best way to experience it, I think. So.
If it were like Mystic Quest or something, I would understand that. But a mainline Final Fantasy game, arguably my favorite, is unacceptable.
I get a lot of blood on my shirt today.
Yeah.
I will say I'm very excited for these on the Switch. I feel like that was always the logical place to put these.
Yeah, that's a great place.
And so, yeah, and if you have not played, particularly 4, 5, and 6, really 4, 5, and 6 are
Got to look on the 6.
these are really worth your time to go back and play. I feel like those games do hold up extremely well. All right. I should note we just got breaking news from our intrepid field reporter, Alicia Utecht, who is texting us while we're live recording. I don't know. I guess she does know that we were recording at this time. Nintendo has released Kirby read-alongs, which are little kind of like Kirby storybook videos on YouTube. And
It's kind of cute.
there are images that come up and then text. And I guess I do not have the sound on since we're on air and everything, but I guess they are reading these to you. So they're like little books for children to have read to them, bedtime stories and that sort of thing. So very cute. One of the like kind of fun, neat, free things that Nintendo does, which they don't do a whole lot of those. So this is actually like worth calling out and everything. So thank you, Alicia, for pointing that out.
Wow, we got like real time like reporting out there, like in the world
Yeah.
amongst us. That I feel pretty fancy right now. Like I think this is like a high water mark for us.
This is like a few weeks ago when we actually played a song live on the show and everything, and then got copyright striked on YouTube for it.
I actually have other breaking news too that I just got.
Okay.
Not very specifically video game, well, but mostly. So the Pokemon anime, they announced that there's going to be a final season with 11 episodes that'll end Ash's storyline.
A final season.
Yeah, and then they're going to start with someone new, other than Ash.
Ash is retiring
Yeah,
after 25 years of being 11.
Yeah.
What? Now wait. So does that mean Team Rocket and Meowth and Pikachu will all retire with him?
I don't know.
Or will he pass Pikachu on to somebody new, or will they get a new starter?
I was talking about this with Frankie, who's another one of my cohort members, big Pokemon fan. He was mentioning that he had seen it, that they're finishing up this season of Pokemon Journeys, which is the current one, and then when they start the next series, which will be centered around the new games, Pokemon Scarlet and Pokemon Violet, yeah, they'll have a new main person, and it won't be Ash, it won't be Pikachu. So I have no idea if Team Rocket or any of those characters that we've come to know and love will be around.
I will be mad if Jesse and James are gone. I love Jesse and James more than the protagonists.
Just make them the main characters already.
Yeah, I mean,
that would be fantastic.
I feel like you could do that, a Team Rocket series, just following them around, being sort of bumbling, like attempted villains, but actually sort of ideally the good guys. People love an anti-hero. You could use that Taylor Swift song as the theme. Like a whole generation loves the Pokemon theme song. Just use that Taylor Swift song as the new theme to Pokemon. And like people already love that song. It's been number one until Mariah Carey came out of her crypt and like took back over number one song.
Like you could have like so many cool like heist and caper episodes and stuff. And
there you go. Listen to us, Nintendo. We obviously know what we're talking about.
Disney knows. You know Disney. You know.
Disney does listen to the podcast.
You're listening to us there from your dream valley, you are.
Let's see. Moving along with news, if there's no other breaking news, Microsoft has offered PlayStation Call of Duty So last week we talked about they offered it for 10 years. They also have now offered it as part of PlayStation Plus. So obviously part of why Microsoft purchased Activision is the ability to put Call of Duty and all these other games onto Game Pass. They have offered Sony, if Sony will stop complaining, that they'll let them put this onto PlayStation Plus. Obviously, they would have to pay Microsoft, but still that would alleviate the advantage that Microsoft conceivably gets from purchasing Call of Duty. So there'd be no exclusive benefits, theoretically, that Microsoft and the Xbox are getting over the PlayStation in this case. Microsoft also claimed that PlayStation can only grow by making Microsoft smaller, which just seems like one of those petty statements. And this doesn't seem like it's ending anytime soon. So we talked about the FTC investigating, opening up a case last week. So this will drag on well into the new year, it seems like. But Microsoft seems like they are really trying to back Sony into a corner here. We're giving you everything you could possibly want. What more could we do other than not buy them? And hey, we're definitely going to buy them. Unreal Tournament 3X is going completely free across not just the Epic Games Store, which owns Unreal, but also onto Steam and to other digital platforms on consoles. This is because they're shutting down the servers from some of the old Unreal games. So this is going to be their new main, I guess, direction with Unreal going into the future. So you can go and download that. I think it's available now if you want to go and download that and play some Unreal Tournament. God of War series is officially a go at Amazon. We talked earlier this year about that potentially being in development. Amazon has officially ordered this to series. So we are getting a God of War series at Amazon. It seems like it will follow the most recent games. Mm-hmm. So I feel like that's kind of a bad choice. I feel like it'd be more interesting to go back and do the Greek games. But if you take this from the PlayStation perspective, they're trying to sell copies of the games. Mm-hmm. And those old games aren't on sale anymore. These new games are for sale on PlayStation 4 and 5. So that makes sense, I guess, from that perspective. Amazon Games is going to publish the next Tomb Raider. So they are making a new Tomb Raider game. It's going to be published by Amazon Games for multi-platform. The reason I kind of lump these together is Amazon Games is publishing the next Tomb Raider game. They have officially canceled the sequel to the last Tomb Raider, the one starring Alicia Utecht. Kind of makes a lot of sense that Amazon might also be making a new Tomb Raider movie or series or something along with this. They haven't officially announced that, but if they're publishing the game and obviously the publishers want to do something with the movie license, that makes a whole lot of sense, right? To just have Amazon produce that. Mm-hmm. So, we're going to get more Tomb Raider content. I don't really care about the movie. I am very excited for another Tomb Raider game. I like this most recent trilogy an awful lot, particularly that second game, which was Rise of the Tomb Raider. That's an extremely good game. If you've never played that,
I just have this image of like Jeff Bezos being like, "Yeah, Lara Croft would totally hang out with me. We'd be total chums."
Well, I mean, he's single and ready to mingle with Lara Croft.
They call me Mr. Clean.
Amazon is also in talks for a Warhammer 40,000 series starring Henry Cavill.
Damn, he's been getting a lot of work lately.
Well, no, he's lost a lot of work.
Oh, that's true. I know, but...
So Henry Cavill has quit the Witcher series. He quit that 2 months ago in order to do a new Superman film, which this week they announced he is out of. They are not making a new film with him anymore. And so now he's basically jumping from one video game series in The Witcher to another video game series. I know Warhammer is also a board game. And I guess was board game first. But but is also a very popular video game franchise as well. So, I mean, that is what Henry Cavill. I will give Henry Cavill some credit for this. He is one of these actors who's like, oh, I'm such a nerd. I'm so into this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
He seems to really walk the walk.
Yeah.
Like, I think he really is into this. I mean, OJ, I'm sure you are familiar with the very famous picture of him, like, building his own computer.
Yeah. Oh, I'm well aware, yeah.
Is that your desktop wallpaper at the moment?
I mean,
It
that's
may
the
or may not
painting
be,
hanging over his fireplace.
But yeah, I mean, he seems like he is legitimately into this stuff and is choosing projects based on that. And that seems cool because, like, if you want somebody like that actually championing these projects.
And yeah, I know he's been losing a lot of work, but just also thinking he's got to play Superman, he's got to be in The Witcher, now he gets to be in 40K. It's like he's got to do a lot of geek things also.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry, like, for him that he kind of lost out on the stuff he did, but I'm happy for him that he gets to continue on in this. And I think it's cool that he is truly a geeky dude. I do think it's, like, sort of, like, tragically funny, though, that Black Adam, crud.
The Rock.
All right, so I'm already going in that direction. In Black Adam, they meet each other, like, at the end, and it's like, oh, yeah, we're going to get more Henry Cavill Superman. Nope.
Well, I mean, even that he publicly went on like Instagram or Twitter and announced, "Hey, I'm back as Superman," and left The Witcher to go and do this. And it is kind of, I mean, it was kind of a train wreck situation.
Yeah.
But I think that wasn't the only reason he left The Witcher, right? He was also upset that they were no longer, like, following the books and the games.
That was
something.
speculation. He never said
Okay.
anything like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, I am fine with him continuing in this genre and doing video game shows and movies because, like, if he is really going to make sure that they stick to the source material, that's going to make a lot of people happy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know Warhammer in particular he's very passionate about. So to have him on board, I mean, I'd almost hope that they would give him not necessarily like creative decision making, but like that they would respect the input that he could provide on a series like this.
Yeah, he may. I don't have this down here. He may actually be a producer on this project, in which case he would have theoretically a little bit more say. Speaking of staying in the, sort of vicinity of Hollywood and gaming, a Death Stranding film is also in the work from the producer of the film Barbarian. That was a kind of big hit this year. So we may also be getting a Death Stranding film. That seems like a very ambitious project, that sort of world and everything. So until that is officially in production, I wouldn't hold my breath, but they're at least working on it. Gaming magazine. So gay-ming, Gaming magazine has announced their Gaming Awards, their nominees at least for this year. And we just wanted to briefly touch on these. So normally when publications, do their the end of the year awards, like we will do after we come back from Christmas break, they don't announce the nominees in advance. And so, in this case, they're trying to recognize LGBTQ representation in video games. They're announcing these nominees in advance because really the whole point of these awards is to shine a light on these games, because a lot of these are kind of smaller indie games and they are doing a great deal of work towards representation. And so, we kind of wanted to also shine a light on those because it's cool. And some of these are certainly games that, we talked before we went on the air that we're not aware of. So real quick, we're not going to read all these awards. They have a ton of awards. You can search Gaming Magazine and find all their awards on their website. But Game of the Year, they had Arcade Spirits, The New Challengers, Cult of the Lamb, Elden Ring, and God of War Ragnarok. But probably the one that actually shines more specific light on some games you may not have heard of, they have their Best LGBTQ Indie Game Award. They have, again, Arcade Spirits. Butterfly Soup 2, Signalis, Validate, Struggling Singles in Your Area, We Are OFK, and Wildflowers, WYLDE, Wildflowers. Under the Authentic Representation Award, they have I Was a Teenage Exoconologist. I don't even know what that is. Saints Row, Signalis, Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, Validate, Struggling Singles in Your Area, and We Are OFK. Under Best LGBTQ Character Award, they have Bones Threewood from Tiny Tina's Wonderland, Bridget from Guilty Gear Strive, Catalyst from Apex Legends, Elster from Signalis, Lore from New Tales from the Borderland, and Terra Wild from Wildflowers. And then for Best LGBTQ Tabletop Game of the Year award, they have Adventuring with Pride, A Quiro's Journey, Pathfinder, Lost Omens, Pride Across the Multiverse, and Tower of the Soul. So the Pride Across the Multiverse, I guess we should point out, is it's what's the game?
Magic.
Yeah, Magic the Gathering. It is a sort of expansion for that in which they take some common cards that already exist in the game and they redid the art. So like one of them is a picture of some mages, and they've given them all like rainbow colored cloaks and everything for the card design. So that was kind of cool. We looked at that before we went on the air. Yeah, we just wanted to like kind of bring some recognition to these. And I don't know, are any of these like standing out to you as things you're interested in trying, or that, having seen the list from these awards and everything, get particular interest from you?
Signalis is one that I'm curious to try. I was just looking that up because like that sounds familiar, and I was like, it's like this is one I want to try. It's a cool survival horror with like a cool pixelated look and kind of an anime-ish aesthetic, and that, I mean, those are things that are like catch my interest. And again, I'm a sucker for good aesthetics, but also I don't know much about it, but just for the title, Validate, Struggling Singles in Your Area, I just love that title. That's great. I'm kind of curious just for that. But aside from that, I mean, other ones that I was already interested in trying before I knew about this list were like Elden Ring and God of War, Ragnarok.
Right.
I think the one that stood out to me was I Was a Teenage Exoconologist. I really know nothing about it, but I remember seeing it at the Jeff Keighley Game Awards, whenever that was, last week or so, 2 weeks ago. It was nominated for, I think, Best Indie Game. And I remember seeing it, and again, not knowing anything about it, really liking the art style, and that's one that I would definitely want to check out. So seeing it listed under this Authentic Representation Award, I think that's particularly cool, so more reason to check it out.
I think so. I'm excited about Validate, Struggling Singles in Your Area, because a lot of the first games that I played that had LGBTQ representation were dating sims. Like there's Dream Daddy, and there's a couple other ones before that I can't remember off the top of my head.
Dream Daddy's a really good game.
It really is, yeah. And there's another one where it's most all but one of the people that you can be with is, so you play a man and almost everyone's another man, but then also there's an option to fall in love with your goldfish. I can't remember what that one is called, but it's a really good game, and then it has a weird you fall in love with your goldfish one. So but yeah, so I have an affinity towards like dating sims, and so if that is a dating sim, then that's something that it looks like it should be. Also the Tiny Tina stuff, because I know I've heard a lot about Tiny Tina. I haven't actually played the Borderlands games, but I've heard a lot about Tiny Tina and people really liking her as LGBTQ representation in Borderlands. So I'm very excited to check that one out too.
Yeah, I guess the other one that I'm familiar with because of it was popular on Twitch because it had like some specific Twitch integration was Cult of the Lamb. The way that like chat would participate as this quote unquote cult. It's not one that I watched a ton, but I do think in considering that integration, it sounds like it had done some pretty cool things. I know some people who were fans of it.
I guess one more that I'm interested in too is I actually am kind of curious about Guilty Gear Strive. I don't play many fighting games. The main fighting games I've played that I really enjoyed were just like the Super Smash Brothers games. There was a while I remember like a long time ago when I was playing like Tekken 3 quite a bit with friends and stuff. But I would like to find a good fighting game that fits me, and I know like one of my favorite YouTubers, Super Eye Patch Wolf, has talked about Guilty Gear Strive, and that's one I want to give a... So for reasons other than this, but like, this kind of gives me more impetus to check that out.
Yeah, I mean, Call of the Lamb I need to play before our Game of the Year stuff because I've really heard a lot of positive things about that. But Wildflowers is the one that I haven't heard anything about that kind of gets my interest and everything from this list. Just sounds interesting, and I don't know really a whole lot about it, so I may check that out as well. All right. There is talk of a new Steam Deck. One of the developers behind that at Valve came out in an interview and said if they were making a new Steam Deck, probably the next iteration would address the screen and battery issues. I assume they mean a better quality screen and extended battery life before they address the power of the system. So the power would probably not be a significant jump up, but there would be other quality of life improvements there. So if you are thinking about buying a Steam Deck and your big concerns are the battery life and the screen, maybe hold out because it sounds like they are working on something at least.
That's cool because the Steam Deck is like one of the consoles I've been more actually interested in. But those were like definitely like deterrents for me, so I'll keep an eye out on this.
They also expressed some interest in doing more Steam boxes. So Steam boxes were their failed attempt at a consoleization of the PC. So if you remember, the original Steam boxes were basically a PC in a console-sized box that would fit under your TV and allow you to play games on your TV. And those failed pretty spectacularly, but at the time when they originally came out, those were Linux-based boxes, and a whole lot of Steam games wouldn't run on them. But now, because of the work that they've done for the Steam Deck and letting lots of games be essentially emulated over onto it using, I forget what their specific stuff is, but it's like Wine for Linux that allows you to run Windows applications on Linux. Because of that, now a Steam box makes a whole lot more sense. So they're kind of interested in returning to that and everything.
That'd be cool.
I'd be interested in the Steam box if it worked.
Yeah, I mean, and considering you're not having to do the screen and the battery and all of that, you could potentially put one of those under a TV a lot cheaper than you can even make a Steam Deck for.
Oh, that'd be great.
So let's see. Super Nintendo World has at Universal Studios Hollywood has announced an official opening date of February 17th, 2023. So guess what, honey? Guess what we're doing for Valentine's Day? Going to Super Nintendo World. I assume that'll be crazy all spring long, but if you're headed out there anytime soon to the LA area, maybe worth checking out and everything. Mario, where are you from originally?
The San Francisco area.
San Francisco? So not too far.
No, it's drivable.
Yeah. So do you think you would try to hit up Super Nintendo World this year?
I think I would definitely consider it if I had friends who are interested. I imagine it will also probably be pretty nuts over the summer. But, I mean, I would certainly love to go just to go. I mean, whether it's this year, next year, 3 years from now, it's one that, I have never been to Universal Studios Hollywood, but this would push me to go.
At least you're on the right coast for it.
Yeah, yeah.
The one in Florida, they are building one there, but I don't think it's supposed to be open until 2025, so still a few years off for it. Apple has announced that they may offer third-party stores on the iPhone with their next update, meaning their next update, next major iOS version. So iOS 17, I think that would be. So that wouldn't be until next year sometime, next fall. But this would open it up for Epic to be able to put their game store onto iPhones. This would allow for Xbox to be able to put their streaming app onto iPhones. This would really open up iPhones to have all sorts of different sort of streaming and new game platforms and everything on there. So that's maybe exciting. Also opens up the possibility for more emulation apps to be potentially on there. Since theoretically, if these are outside app stores, Apple would not be approving the apps going through them. So you would assume emulators would be rampant on there. If you're interested in the PSVR 2, it's getting a Fantavision game at launch, which how many of you remember Fantavision?
I honestly don't.
I vaguely remember it being a thing. I never like played with it or knew much about it.
So Fantavision was a PS2 launch game, at least in the US. I think it was very shortly after launch in Japan. And it's a fireworks rhythm game. So it is a game of fireworks going off, and you're setting off fireworks like to a rhythm and everything, and it's pretty neat. And it seems like the sort of game that would work very well in VR, but like who thought we would get a sequel to that game now and on VR particularly? So kind
hey
of
everybody,
fun.
do you miss this game? I mean, I was okay with it. Well, we're releasing a sequel now. It's 25 years ago. Yes.
That very much seems to be the thinking to it. Let's see. We're almost out of time here. So Spider-Man 2 has a release date set for fall of 2023. Not a specific release date, but at least a time frame. So that game is obviously going to be one of PlayStation 5's big releases for next fall. Obviously, the Spider-Man games have been extremely successful for them so far, both with the original and then Miles Morales at the PlayStation 5 launch. So that's pretty exciting to see. So we'll keep an eye on that. All right, that leads us to our big question of the week. And since we are headed into the holiday season, what do you wish Santa would bring the game industry for Christmas? So this isn't necessarily a specific game, but maybe just a trend or a change or a shift in the game industry that you wish Santa would dump on the living room floor under the tree for the game industry this year, instead of just a lump of coal. Maybe something positive to make the game industry better. OJ, why don't we start with you?
So I say Santa should bring diversity, equity, and inclusion to the game industry. Especially, it's always been a pretty much a straight white man's game. So bringing a lot more voices to it and lowering the amount of horrible stuff that we've seen coming out, like Blizzard, Activision, every week. So just making things better for the people that are working there, more unions, like for the unions for the testers, all of that. I want to see Santa make the game industry better for the people that are working there.
All right, that's an admirable want. Ryan, how about you?
I'll add on to this by saying like that, and in the games themselves, whether rather than me getting excited about like one game where you have a non-binary option, make this a much more regular trend of things you see, and even in games where you don't necessarily choose who your character is, start regularly having games that are put out with more like trans and non-binary protagonists.
All right, Mario.
So I was going to say also healthier working conditions, but since OJ hit on that, I'm going to say a return to the collectathons. give me a Donkey Kong 64 2 with 7,000 collectibles, and just make that every game that comes out now. A return.
Donkey Kong 4000.
Yeah, so I think I had thought kind of the same thing. OJ, I think, listed a whole lot of different things. He hit on unions and all that, and that's certainly a very positive thing for the industry. I would say, and we talked about this, I believe, last week, accessibility and how the game industry has done a lot of very positive things for accessibility in recent years. And to PlayStation's credit, we give PlayStation a lot of crap here, justifiably so. I feel like that PlayStation has particularly been a leader in this, and their major big releases, just having wonderful accessibility options, and they seem to be building from game to game on those. I know that I have a friend who gets motion sickness with games sometimes, and looking at the new God of War, she was very excited because there's actually like a motion sickness option on there that actually changes several options within the game. And I feel like that's the next step in accessibility, is not just a whole lot of options, but making those options easy when you start up the game to be able to say, why, yes, I am colorblind, or why, yes, I do get motion sickness, and I can just check a box and have the game be easier for me because of that. Not easier to beat, but easier to engage with because of options in there. So I would like to see that be more of a focus of the industry. I understand why little indie games can't do that as easily, but I feel like it's the sort of thing that Microsoft and Nintendo and Sony and even Valve with Steam can cook some of those features in at a basic level to allow those to be easier to implement. So hopefully we see more of that going forward. All right, that does it for us this week. This is our final episode of 2022. We are going on holiday break, so we will not be recording next week, which I think is Saturday's Christmas Eve, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it would be Christmas Eve. We will not be putting out an episode then, but we'll be back soon after the beginning of the new year as we head back into classes and all of that, and we'll start up recording. And when we do that, we hopefully will be doing some stuff with Game of the Year. We're taking the holiday break to be able to actually catch up on some games, and everybody wanted that time. Also, this being finals week meant that it was not at all going to get done anything with Game of the Year if it had happened the same time as finals. So we'll have all of that when we get back, and we'll have some surprises with that and everything. Mario, we want to thank you for joining us. It's always great to have you fill in and everything. And obviously with Alicia, we just never know where she'll be. There are still controllers out there that have not been updated to the latest firmware. So, she may always be off on a mission somewhere, but you're always welcome to come back and everything. We like having you on the show.
Well, thank you for having me. I guess if I'm going to replace anybody, Alicia maybe for the best, because I know she was not happy with me with my Sonic opinions. But, if an episode comes where we are on a show together, it might get a little spicy.
OJ's just like, don't worry, we'll have a chair for you. Just give me 5 minutes in the parking lot with Ryan, and we'll have a new chair open for you.
And then Alicia will beat Mario up in the parking lot afterwards for the Sonic opinions.
Tag team WWE style.
Yeah.
I feel like really, if Alicia's not going to be here, we need another Sonic apologist. I don't know if we have one. I don't know if anybody who's guested on the show has been a Sonic apologist. Maybe that's why some people we've only had on as a guest once, because they were too fond of Sonic, and we were like, no, we can't have that on this show.
Eventually, we're just going to have a big schism. Like, when there's like two Sonic apologists and two people that are just like, no.
But for all of our listeners, thank you for listening to us over the past year and everything. This basically isn't a full year of doing the podcast, but it's the first calendar year we've gotten through and everything. So thank you for listening. Have a Merry Christmas, a Happy Hanukkah, an awesome Kwanzaa, whatever you celebrate this holiday season. Enjoy it with your family and friends. Be safe out there, and we will be back again in the new year. Bye.